Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over some teasers and more predictions regarding the DLC characters we're going to be getting for Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. Now specifically we're going to be commenting on the 6 characters that are said to be included in the Season Pass for the game. The Season Pass, by the way, is just a little bit less expensive than buying all of these characters individually, so if you're someone who sees yourself playing it as the months go on, this is going to be something you're going to want to look into. This information is coming from a live stream that took place, I think, within hours of the Japanese launch for Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. That's right, the game's already out in Japan. We have an open beta for the US and EU that starts on January 13th and runs through the 21st. And then we will have the official launch for the rest of the world on January 30th. So keep all of those numbers in mind. So they straight up gave us a gender, whether they were new or returning, and what range of Final Fantasy games they came from. They specifically used the terms first half and new half, basically, meaning the old half, or the original half, being Final Fantasies 1 through 7, and the new half being Final Fantasies 8 through 15. That's an approximation. I think somebody actually translated it and said that those were the ranges that we were working with. So those are the ranges that we're going to be going through based on these predictions. It has to be a half. It can't just be like Final Fantasies 1 through 10 and then 11 through 15. It's not exactly halves right there. So the first new character we're going to be getting is a new male character from Final Fantasies 8 through 15. That means it'll be a character that wasn't in the original Dissidias on the PSP. It's a male character, and they're from somewhere between Final Fantasies 8 and 15, but we don't know exactly which one. There's also going to be a new male character from somewhere between Final Fantasies 1 and 7. There's going to be a new female character from between Final Fantasies 8 and 15. Another new male character between Final Fantasies 8 and 15. There's going to be a character returning, a female character from between Final Fantasies 8 and 15. And there's going to be another new male character from between Final Fantasies 8 and 15. Now, there's a lot of information that we can glean from that. First of all, I'd like to say they're probably going to add more than 6 characters over the course of the game. When the arcade was first launching, they said ideally they'd like to have a cast of 50 plus characters by the time the game's life cycle is over. So expect these to not be the only characters that they eventually intend to add to the game. Second of all, there's a lot of information about characters we won't see for a really long time. None of those criteria meet characters like Gilgamesh from Duodecim, Los Angeles. Gotta love it. They don't meet any of the criteria for Gilgamesh from Duodecim. Tifa, for example, again, is not any of these unless they extend that returning range to Final Fantasy 7 through 15. But there is something that's a little more likely to come from that returning female character. So there are some definitely characters from the old games that you probably won't see. Gabroth is another big one. He's clearly not one of these characters that are going to be in the first 6 DLC. So why don't we predict, based on other comments that they've made and stuff like that, what these characters are going to be? So I'm just going to scroll down here to my list. Now, some of this list you've seen before, because it's not the first time I brought some of these characters up. Now, they've explicitly stated, both during that live stream and in previous iterations, that villains from Final Fantasies 11 through 15 are something that they are definitely looking toward adding, because it's kind of weird that they stop at 10, and with the removal of Gabroth, who is a chaotic, I believe, a chaotic neutral, it's just the back half of the game is lacking in villains. On top of that, with Ace, Ramza, Kain, it's just like super lopsided. So, first character, I think, is going to be a villain, and that pretty much means it's got to be Arden Azunia or Caius Ballad. I don't see it being like Cam Lanot from 11 or Xenosia Galvez from 14. I really don't see it being Vayne Solidor from 12. I think they're going to go with either 15 first, because 15 is like the most recent one, so they might be trying to time it maybe with the PC release. Or Caius Ballad. I don't see another really good villain to come from 13. Cid Raines is a possibility. Disley or Disley, I don't even remember, it's been so long. I don't see him really being a possibility. And, I mean, there are other ones I guess you could kind of take, but I'm going with my boy Caius, who I've wanted in Dissidia for the longest time. Now, for the second character, the male character from between Final Fantasies 1 and 7. This one I'm really not sure about. I look at Final Fantasy 1, there's not going to be another character, or at least not another hero. There are, I guess, other characters you could pull, but Final Fantasy 1 is likely done. Final Fantasy 2 has a lot of characters, but none of them are really stand-out-ish, I suppose, unless they want a joke character like Gordon. Final Fantasy 3, they didn't even get named until the DS release, so we probably won't see anything from there. 4, a male character, we'll talk about the possibilities of one I think it could be there. Of course, Palom and Porum, if they had given us more to work with, would have been a possibility, but I don't think we'll be seeing them. Final Fantasy V, Galuf is a big one. He's a favorite of mine. I don't think they'll do it, but it is one that I'm kind of hoping. But Locke Cole is the one that I'm landing on. And the specific reason is they brought on the voice actor for one of the DLC characters a few months ago during one of these live streams that they did. And he said he was a young boy. Now, Locke Cole is definitely on the younger side. And as much as I'd love to see it be something like Sabin or Edgar as well, I think that they said it was also a pretty popular character, and it was one that was frequently requested over in Japan. And Locke apparently was pretty high on that list. So Locke Cole is my prediction for the second character that they're going to be adding. The third character is a female between Final Fantasies 8 and 15 and is new to the cast. So that's not Yuna, that's not Prish. Man, there's a lot of motorcycles out tonight. It's not Yuna, it's not Prish. So who are other female characters? You have Ash from 12. There's a bunch of female characters from 11, more than I could possibly count. So any of those is a possibility. Obviously, Riku from Final Fantasy X. Lulu's a possibility, but I don't think that's very likely. I think that it'd be kind of hard to fit her in kind of like the mage categories that they have now. 9, obviously, Beatrix is a very popular one. Garnet is also not present in the game. And then there's also Rinoa. But I think it's either going to be someone from, again, 13 or 15. The thing is, if we get Caius Ballad as the first one, I don't think Fang will be the one for the later half. The Fang guess is mostly just because I look at the characters and I don't really know who I'd want out of the cast between Final Fantasies 8 and 15 to be joining other than Rinoa, Fang, or I guess Aranea. Like I listed a bunch of possibilities there, so that one's really wide open. So go crazy with your guesses on who that's going to be. Then you have another character from between 8 and 15. Again, we know they're really looking to add villains, so if Caius Ballad is the first one, I think this one's Arden Izunia. If Arden Izunia is the first one, I think this one's Caius Ballad. I think we're going to be seeing villains. Again, 11, 12, and 14 are all viable to have villains there, but I think we're going to see those two first in the form of male villains from the later half of the series. Now, returning female character from between Final Fantasies 8 and 15, there were 3 female characters from Dissidia Duodecim that are missing in the current title. Tifa from Final Fantasy VII, Yuna from Final Fantasy X, and Prish from Final Fantasy XI. Now, among those, Tifa is likely the most popular, so if they extend this back half list to include 7, which would be a pretty lopsided back half, although you could, I guess, technically break it down between the 2-dimensional era versus the 3-dimensional era, in which case that breaks it down pretty nicely. If it's not Tifa, it's Yuna. Like, Prish was a good character in Duodecim. She was definitely interesting, which I didn't expect them to do her justice, and she was quite good there. But Yuna and Tifa are the 2 most requested ones. So if it stays between Final Fantasy 8 and 15, I have to believe that's going to be Yuna. Just leaving the possibility open, it has to be Tifa, Yuna, or Prish. And if it's from the back half, then it feels to me like Yuna would be the more likely of the 3. And finally, another male character from between Final Fantasy 8 and 15. I'm just going to go with another villain. I'm going to guess Vayne Solidor. We already know none of these characters are Gabranth. Final Fantasy 12 had a sort of villain in the previous games. He was a neutral character to some degree, but he leaned towards the Chaos side. And I don't know, like, there's other characters that you could pull. Like, you could technically pull the Final Fantasy 12 equivalent of Cid, not Alcid, Cid. And with Zodiac Age getting a ton of traction this last year, now with a PC launch imminent for the game in February, that's a possibility. But I think Vayne Solidor, I think they hammer down and they go with Vayne Solidor. I just don't feel like him and Vaughn really have much of a hero-villain connect. Granted, Vaughn doesn't have much connection with any character in Final Fantasy 12, so, you just shut up, Vaughn. So those are my 6 predictions based on strictly the hints that they gave us. But there's more we can figure out here. So from this point on in the video, story spoilers. I have played through the story mode in the Japanese Dissidia, and I'm going to be giving you information based on that. So if you don't want any spoilers, you turn the video off now. You got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. So the next portion of what they predicted for us, if I would just not press 3 at the top, was that there's some additional info. Now, they gave us this quote, and this quote comes from Siliconera. That's where I found this initially, so I'll include the source in the description of the video. But this was a comment that was given by one of the people on the live stream. And I know it's kind of cut off a little bit, so let me just do... So, this was the quote. There are some characters that have an extremely low amount of scenes in the story. This couldn't be helped as they share relationships with characters that will be added through DLC later. Among them, some characters that will play key roles in the story. So, specifically, this answer was in regards to why some characters have very few scenes, and it was expressed by the developers they'd like to add new scenes in the future. So the Season Pass says nothing about new story, but it's possible that story will be coming alongside some of those DLC characters that we get. So as much as I'm done with the story, there may be scenes for me to revisit later that aren't included in the initial Season Pass message. So let me give you my experience with the Dissidia story, and from that we can maybe try to narrow down some of the potential DLC characters. So first of all, the 15 main heroes, the primary hero from Final Fantasies 1 through 15, all get significant airtime. None of them is shorted. They all have their own sections of the story where they interact with each other. So I just rule all of those out. Scrolling down, let me scroll down a little bit further. So Kain, Ace, and Ramza have no presence in the story, and the developers said that they explained they wanted to use their time to focus on the 15 main. There's more to that comment that I could add, but basically you don't play as Kain, Ace, or Ramza throughout the story at all. So you could maybe consider that, but they gave a reason, so we're going to also kind of exclude that from that teaser that we just got before. Now, for the villains, on the other hand, Kefka, Sephiroth, and Exdeath have an insane amount of screen time. So I don't think it's going to be related to them at all. Kuja, Jekt, and Garland all have very significant appearances, but they are also not on screen as long as Kefka, Sephiroth, and Exdeath. So those start to fall into territory where you might want to see new scenes between certain characters. Cloud of Darkness, Ultimecia, and the Emperor all appear, but it's very short-lived and they have far less significant roles than Kuja, Jekt, and Garland. They're all ripe for having characters added from their games. Although I made some reasons earlier why I don't think they will. And Golbez himself literally does not appear in the story outside of scenes that have all the villains collectively. I had to go back and watch the scenes because when we finally saw Golbez, we all looked at each other in my stream and we were like, wait, he hasn't been in a single scene this whole game. And so he's the big one I'm looking at here. So through this information, let's cross-reference their appearances in the story and hints at the DLC characters. So first of all, Golbez. We got to talk about that. He had no presence in the main story at all. This is especially odd because if it's because the characters they're interacting with aren't there. Cecil has a major role in the story, like the other 14 heroes do, and Kain is already in the game. Even if he's not present in the story, he's there. And if there's any three characters I think would interact with each other, it would be Cecil, Kain, and Golbez. Like, now, there's a few possibilities here, but I don't think that based on their hints we'd see these exact things. It's possible that they'll just, based on their other comment that they want to add new scenes later on, it's possible that maybe Kain gets a story section later now that they've gone through the focus of the 15 main heroes. It's also possible that the male character from between Final Fantasies 1 and 7 is Edge, or one of the other male characters, Tella, Edge, one of the Palmporm twins. I wouldn't want to see one without the other. There are other possibilities, but for me, Edge just kind of leans towards the more believable side. Yang is another one. There's plenty of characters, but I would put my money on Edge, specifically because of the comment that one of the DLC characters is a young boy. So that's going to be my prediction in regards to Golbez. But honestly, I just think that Kain not being present in the story was a big reason why they left Golbez out. I just don't think it's a great reason. Now, Cloud of Darkness and the Emperor come from games that don't really have a standout cast. Like the Emperor has technically at least named heroes. The Cloud of Darkness, they didn't have names until the 3D release. So I don't think we'll see any characters from Final Fantasy 3. And the Emperor from Final Fantasy 2, like I know those characters, but I don't see any of them holding enough significance to get a spot on the Dissidia cast, especially when there's so many other characters that are highly requested. Ultimecia, on the other hand, does have a significant adversary and important interaction with their story in their base game, in that of Renoa, who happens to fall into the category of being a second half of the series new female DLC character. Now, I'm not saying that it is Renoa, I'm just saying that if we were to take that teaser and that hint about new characters as verbatim, that Ultimecia not having a huge impact means that they would wait to add Renoa so that they would have more scenes together. And those are two characters that based on their origins as, sorceresses and what Ultimishia's ultimate plan is, I'd imagine Ultimishia would have a lot to say to Rinoa in the Duodecim story. So we're going to throw that one in there. Now, Kuja's scenes may be short-lived, like I mentioned earlier, but him and Garland, they hold a great deal of significance when they do appear in the story. So I don't think that, first of all, Final Fantasy 1, again, we can't really have any characters. And Kuja, I mean, again, there's a bunch of possibilities, male, female characters from between Final Fantasy 8, but it didn't feel like he was shorted at all. Kuja had plenty of interactions, and he was fun to watch on screen. Now, Jecht has a similar appearance to Kuja and Garland, but they don't give him much time to really, I guess, settle with you before he's gone again. So this, of course, could be because one of the new returning female characters, I should say, from the previous PSP titles is Yuna, which is already 50% chance of happening. Now, Jecht and Yuna don't particularly have interactions that would, I guess, warrant this kind of relationship to be hinted at. It's really with her father, Lord Braska, which I'm not going to even lay as a possibility, because we know very little about that man in terms of his combat capabilities, other than that he was a summoner, and we'd all rather have Yuna anyway. So that's pretty much that going. So that's a possibility as well, but that's the least likely one. Yuna's still like the most probable, but she just doesn't have like a huge interaction. Her and Tidus together, though, do have a lot of interactions, and Tidus has interactions with Jecht, and Jecht never really gets to, see his son and, and his relationship with Yuna really blossom just because of what ends up happening in Final Fantasy X. So those are really my takeaways from what they said. It doesn't really tell us a whole lot, but at least it gives us an idea that there's not just new characters coming, there's also new story coming, and I'm looking forward to that. My experience with NT, I'll be posting a video about it sometime this week after I've gotten some matches on in the matches going in the beta, and getting to know the netcode a little bit better so I can comment on stuff like that. But let me know what your predictions are based on that tip at the top of your screen right now. Be sure to put that in the comment section below and keep it to those 6. List 6. Who it is, why, is it because you really want them, is it because they fall in this category, is it because they qualify based on the conditions? Any of those things make sense. Thank you. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll keep you up to date on everything going on with Dissidia. Thank you, and until next time, take care.